Chapter 1. Give it to me. Don't deny me the pleasure. Velma moaned as she clutched the stranger's shirt. She did not know what was happening to her body. She just felt hot all over, and the touch of the man before her increased the intensity of the fire in her body. Are you sure? Asked the man in a hoarse voice. Velma clutched his neck tightly and kissed him. She was thirsty, and her body needed relief. It appeared as if her life depended on that one kiss. Don't regret it then. You asked for it, said the man as carried her towards the bedroom. The sounds of clothes being torn could be heard. The hurried breathing of the two people in the room made one's heart race. Albert landed a kiss on Velma's collarbone. She moaned in pleasure as she asked for more. Not being able to hold back anymore, he threw her on his body, and his heavy weight followed her. Waking up in a daze, Velma felt her whole body aching. Seeing the unfamiliar environment appears in her eyes, she was immediately awake. She turned around and bumped into a heavy chest. "Aya!" Velma screamed. Looking down at her body, she found that she was naked with nothing on. Velma's face immediately turned pale. She was naked, lying in a foreign bed with a strange man beside her. Don't tell her she just did that with an unknown man. To confirm her guess, Velma tailed her hand towards the lower part of her body. Feeling the soreness and the dryness, Velma gasped. She quickly slid off the bed and went to find her clothes. But they were torn in pieces and could not even be worn. She took the shirt that was lying on the floor and put it on hastily. Before she left, she looked at the man lying on the bed with a deep gaze. It was as if she wanted to imprint that face in her mind forever. She left the room without looking back. She reached outside. The surroundings seemed familiar. Suddenly the memories of what happened last night flooded her mind. They had a class reunion yesterday that was organized by their class president. Since she was free and it was a weekend, she decided to come and have some fun. But why did she end up in a stranger's room? Didn't the class president give each one of them a room card? As she remembered everything, something did not feel right. She felt like someone had set her up, but she did not want to think about the details. What she needed now was a good shower and rest, because her body did not feel good. She wanted to go to the hospital and do some checkups. Winnie had been waiting for the whole night to watch the show, but she did not see Velma going to her room. Had she known about her plan, or did she go to the wrong room? The men she had arranged had also been drugged, and not being able to endure the torture of the aphrodisiac, they turned on each other. It was so disgusting that Winnie immediately turned off the camera. In the morning, she left sneakily. She was uneasy thinking that Velma has found out about her plan and was plotting her revenge. On Albert's side, after waking up he naturally thought of what had happened last night and subconsciously turned to the other side of the bed. Seeing that no one was on the bed, he immediately frowned. Was it all a dream? Albert thought. But looking at the mess on the floor, he knew that it was not a dream. The feeling was so real that he could still feel her lingering scent on the sheets. He had never done anything like this in his entire life. He was not someone who liked to associate himself with the other gender. He had always been aloof and unwelcoming to women. Those who tried to approach him by using dirty means were dealt with accordingly. But seeing the young lady yesterday, her misty eyes carried a seductive light. With her full and voluptuous lips that looked like they were smitten with honey, he could not help but want to taste. Although his inner voice told him that he cannot take advantage of a young girl, and of the fact that she was drunk, Albert could not resist anymore. He ravaged her without caring about the consequences. The girl was on high as if she has been drugged. That only stimulated his desire to conquer her. Although it was only for a night, Albert remembered every inch of her body. Her full bosom, her waist was thin, and her legs were long and straight. He had never seen such a perfect body. She had a mild scent that only belonged to young girls who have not grown up fully. Albert woke up. He wrapped himself in the sheets and stood up. Seeing the bloodstain on the white sheet, he knew that he had to find the girl and be responsible for her. He thought that when he woke up, they will be able to talk about what happened last night. He had suspected that the girl was drugged, but he did not expect the girl to run away. Now he did not know where to start looking. He only knew her English name. Nothing else, even a surname. When Velma reached home, she first showered and changed into a clean set of clothes. She went to his father's study. His father had to know where she was last night and everything that happened to her. She was not used to keeping things from her father, especially after her mom left. She knocked on the door. "Come in." Velma pushed the door open and entered. "Dad." Velma called softly. "Baby, when did you come back?" Her dad asked. "Just now. We had a reunion party yesterday, and we slept in a hotel." Velma said. Her father could sense that something was wrong with her. "What is wrong, baby? Did someone bully you?" Martin asked softly. Thinking of last night's events, and the fact that she had slept with a stranger, Velma burst into tears. "Dad, I failed you. I messed up big time," Velma said as she sobbed. "Cool down and explain to me what happened." Velma calmed down and told her father what had transpired in detail. After listening, Martin's face looked gloomy. He was so mad that he could not even utter a word. "How dare someone takes advantage of my daughter, huh? Do they want to die?" Martin asked angrily. "Dad, I just wanted the hospital and do some tests. I fear that someone had drugged me on purpose. I cannot think of anyone for now, but I will find him or her." "Yes, let me take you to the hospital," Martin said as he stood up. At the hospital, after the tests were completed, Velma and her father waited for the results, each one of them buried in their thoughts. The doctor called them after an indefinite amount of time has passed. "Your daughter was drugged by a strong aphrodisiac. If she did not find relief in time, I'm afraid, she would have been even paralyzed," the doctor said. Velma felt ashamed. Even the doctor knew that she had done that thing without even asking. But now there is only a small trace of it in her blood. But that is not a big deal. She just needs to rest at home, and she will be fine in no time. When they left the hospital, the car was filled with silence. It was suffocating. Velma cleared her throat. "Dad, I'm sorry. I did not protect myself well," Velma said, feeling guilty. "It is not your fault, baby. It is a daddy who did not do a good job." Martin said. "Let's go home. We will talk about the rest after you have rested." Chapter 2. 9 months later. "Mom, I think my water just broke. Can you help me? I have to go to the hospital," Velma said to the woman sitting on the sofa busy trimming her nails. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat as she struggled to walk down the stairs. "What? Now you know how to call me Mom. When you messed around and got yourself pregnant, did you ever think about this family? About your dad's reputation?" Susan howled. "Just help me call the butler. I want someone who can help me go to the hospital," Velma said as she tried to endure the pain she was in. She did not have the time to quibble with her stepmother. She has had enough for the past 9 months she has been pregnant. Only her father had supported her wholeheartedly. After the night with that stranger, she had unfortunately gotten pregnant. Not wanting to have an abortion and kill the innocent child, she decided to keep her baby. But her stepmother was against it to the extent that she had even tried to give her abortion pills. Velma was cautious and knew that her stepmother did not like her, so she did not dare take anything her stepmother gave her. The servants told her that she saw Madame mixing something in her tea, but did not know what it was. Velma was alert and told the servant to pour it away. Since then, she has never taken anything prepared by her stepmother. "Why don't you call the bastard who made you pregnant, huh? How can a girl be so careless? Going around and parading yourself with who knows who? Didn't you even think that you can get pregnant?" Susan continued in a sarcastic voice. She knew what happened to Velma, but she always said those things so as to agitate her. This girl has taken her husband's attention, and she did not like it. Since she could not even give birth, Martin did not even care about her. His attention was always on his beloved daughter. "Do you dare say that when my dad is around? Hurry up or I will call Dad and report you." Velma used all the strength she had in her body to say those words. Immediately after saying that, Velma slumped on the floor. Susan was now frightened. She dared to mess with Velma because she knew she will never tell on her. But if anything were to happen to her, Martin will skin her alive. "Hurry! Your miss is in labor. She has fainted. Hurry up and prepare the car," Susan ordered frantically. The butler was shocked and immediately went to get the car. On the way to the hospital, Susan called Martin. "Hello, Martin. We are sending Velma to the hospital now. She is in labor and she even fainted." Susan did not dare to act arrogant again. "What did you say? Did I not order you to take care of her and not let anything happen to her? What have you been doing?" Martin roared from the other end of the phone. Susan felt coldness transmitting in her body. She gritted her teeth and apologized. I will be right there. But if anything happens to my daughter, be prepared to pack your things and go," Martin said and hung up the phone. Susan's face turned pale. If this bitch could just die. All that she knows is to cause her trouble, Susan thought as she looked at Velma with hatred. The butler did not know how many red lights he passed, but they were soon at the hospital. He also knew how their master valued the young miss, and if anything were to happen to her, their life would also be on the line. "Doctor, please save my daughter." Susan faked a cry as she stood beside Velma, who was on a stretcher. "Prepare emergency operation room immediately. This lady is in a critical condition." Looking at Velma's condition, the nurse immediately said to others. Soon Velma was wheeled in the operation room. She was already unconscious and was unaware of things happening around her. "Where is my daughter?" Martin asked Susan the moment he stopped beside her. "She is still in the OR," Susan said. She was terrified just looking at her husband's expression. Although she has wished for Velma to die when they coming to the hospital, but now she could only pray that she be safe. Just then, the nurse that took Velma walked out. Martin immediately clutched her clothes. "How is my daughter? Is she okay?" Martin asked in a trembling tone. "Mr. The baby was delivered successfully. If you could excuse me now. Your daughter is hemorrhaging. I need to find blood," the nurse said, clearly annoyed. She has been in the operation for a long time, and the moment she left, this gentleman man stopped her. "What? You need to save my daughter at all cost. I'm her father. I can donate blood for her," Martin said frantically. "Okay. Go in and sanitize. We will run some tests on you," the nurse said, feeling less annoyed. At least he has saved her the trouble of running back and forth to the blood bank. 30 minutes later, Martin came out of the room with a pale face. The doctor's voice echoed in his head again and again. "Sorry, sir, but your blood group does not match with that of your daughter. We cannot use your blood." He felt like he was walking through the 18 gates of hell, as he supported his weak body on the cold wall. "Martin, are you okay?" Susan asked with a worried voice, as she went to support him. "Don't touch me," Martin said coldly. Susan shuddered as she moved a step behind in fear. What happened to her husband? Wasn't he going to donate blood for her daughter? Why is he so hostile? Susan did not dare to go near Martin again. She watched as he staggered towards the entrance, and did not go over to help him. She waited for the doctor to come out so she could inquire about Martin. The following morning, Velma opened her eyes. The glaring light made her close her eyes instinctively. She opened her eyes again as she adjusted to the light. After adjusting to the light, she looked at her surrounding. Remembering what happened yesterday, she touched her belly only to find that it was not protruding. A nurse came in holding a small dumpling in her hands. "You are awake. Just in time to feed your baby," the nurse said as she handed over the baby. Being in contact with her baby for the first time, Velma's heart melted. A smile as warm as a spring breeze bloomed on her lips. "This is my baby. My baby." Velma could not help but get emotional. She never knew that a day will come when she will hold her own baby, her own flesh and blood. She was so excited and fumbled to find her phone, so she could call her dad and share the good news. She tried to call her dad many times, but she did not get through him. Although this has never happened before, she did not think too much about it. At 7 p.m. her stepmother came. "You are awake?" Susan asked as she smiled meaningful. "Where is Dad? Why hasn't he come to see me?" Velma ignored her and asked her a different question. "Your dad? No, he is not your dad anymore," Susan said, smiling happily. "What did you say? Can you speak in a human language?" Velma said, annoyed. "Yesterday after giving birth, you were bleeding too much and you needed blood. Your father offered to donate blood for you, but after the tests came out, he realized that you are not his daughter because your blood type is not the same. He left feeling heartbroken and said he does not want to see you. In fact, he is not paying for your hospital bill, and you should start packing, because I have already told the hospital to chase you out," Susan said smugly. She was so pleased that she felt like shouting out loud. Finally, this *ch will not be a pain in the ass anymore. Chapter 3. It was late at night. Velma was alone on the streets with a newborn baby. She had nowhere to go or no one to call. Her only friend Brenda was out of town, and she could not reach her. "Your dad left you after knowing that you are not his daughter. Now you have no one to help you and take care of you. You are all on your own," Her head felt like bursting when she remembered her stepmother's word. She did not believe that Martin was not her biological father. She did not have the energy to call to him, because she knew that he was not willing to see her now. Her mother died when she was young, from a car accident, but they never found her body. Her father had investigated for a long time, and he already gave up. She has grown up with the love of her father, and never felt like she missed her mother. Her father's endless love and pampering made her not to crave for her mother's love. Now her only pillar and support had left her. Velma was in so much despair that she felt like dying. Her father wanted her to do an abortion after finding out that she was pregnant, but she had insisted on keeping her baby. Her father would never go against her wishes and supported her wholeheartedly. Velma walked aimlessly on the dark path without any sense of direction. Her baby was wrapped in a thin piece of cloth. It was too cold, but Velma only had a simple dress on her. She could only wrap her baby tightly in her embrace to give him warmth. Albert attended a business party that ended late and was on his way home. He had drunk quite a bit and closed his eyes to rest. The moment he closed his eyes, the incident from 9 months ago replayed in his mind. He had tried to find Velma, but to no avail. He only knew her first name and nothing more. He has never forgotten that day, and it will always appear in his mind the moment he closed his eyes. He had expanded his resources to look for her, but he has not been successful. He suspected that she had gone overseas. Albert opened his eyes and looked outside through the window. He has rested for some time, and his mind was clear. He didn't know why, but his heart started to beat furiously. Just then he saw a figure that had long been arched in his mind, standing beside the road, looking lonely and desolate. He did not have time to react before he shouted to the driver. "Stop the car!" "Boss!" The driver was dumbfounded. "I said stop the car or you are fired." Albert repeated his words, his voice sounding cold. Driver felt his back drench in cold sweat in seconds. He hastily pressed on the emergency brake, and the car came to a sudden stop. He wondered what he had done wrong for his boss to be so enraged. Before he could react to what was happening before him, his boss had already flung the door open and was running in a certain direction. He immediately alighted from the car and looked at the surrounding with vigilance. Although he was a driver, he was also a highly trained bodyguard to protect his boss. Velma was on verge of breaking down when she heard hurried footsteps from behind her. She quickly held her baby in protective posture and looked at the man who was walking towards her. She was shocked and she instinctively wanted to run away. She will never forget that face. That day, 9 months ago, when she woke up and saw that face sleeping next to her. At that time, she did not know who the man was. But as months went by, she saw him more often on the news. He was the famous Albert Bill who had just returned from overseas. Velma's eyes flashed with panic. Has he known that she was pregnant with his baby, and he has come to take it? She could not help but take a step back. When Albert saw her vigilance, he did not know what to feel. Shame, despair, panic. He experienced all those emotions in a split of a moment. He did not move any step further, and stood there rooted on the ground with a solemn look on his face. Just then the baby in Velma's arms started crying. Albert's body shook. He did not expect that she had a little baby with her. He had not even noticed because the baby was too small. Remembering what might the consequences of what happened that night, his mind was excited. Did she get pregnant and gave birth to their baby? Albert could not remain calm and walked toward Velma. Velma wanted to run away, but her legs could not listen to her. She stayed rooted on the ground as she watched the man approach her step by step. "Velma!" Albert called out. His voice was trembling, and he was almost on his knees. Velma looked at him dumbfounded. So he knew her name. Was he the one who drugged her? But Velma shook her head in denial. This man had just returned from abroad, and might not have known a small fry like her. "What do you want from me?" Velma found her voice and asked. "It is really you." Albert felt the corners of his eyes getting wet. He was someone who never lost his cool easily, but today he could not control his emotions. "I have been trying to find you for past 9 months. I thought what happened that night was all a dream, but I never gave up on finding you, and today I finally did," Albert said. Velma looked at his eyes to see if there was anything abnormal, but she was met with a pair of sincere eyes. She did not know how to react. "Maybe you found the wrong person," Velma said. Immediately she felt her head spinning. She tried to bite her tongue. so she could not fall, but it was in vain. She immediately succumbed to darkness. When Albert saw her swaying, he was panicked and immediately held her and the baby. He hurried to the car and immediately commanded the driver to drive at the maximum speed. In the process, he called his doctor, Dr. Miles, and told him to prepare all the medical equipment. He was someone who did not like going to the hospital. He had his own medical team on standby anytime something happened to him. He was holding the baby at his hand, and Velma lied quietly in his side. It was awkward because he did not know how to hold the little baby, and the baby also kept on wailing. But he was not irritated because the moment he held the baby in his hands, he felt a certain sensation of excitement coursing through his body. He had never felt this way before, and he immediately understood that this baby was definitely his. Chapter 4. When Martin reached home, he went directly to his bedroom, opened the drawer beside his bed, and took out some stuff. Those stuffs belonged to his dead wife, that is Velma's mom, and he treasured them like they were some priceless treasures. When he met Velma's mother, he had just graduated from college and was struggling to start his own business. He was not from a rich family where children could just inherit their family business after they came of age. He started from the scratch and built his way up to where he was today. Velma's mother, Christine, was good at designing jewelry, and when they met, she suggested to Martin that they start a jewelry company, and she will be the chief designer, and she will also teach people, so that when she was not around, they will keep the company going. Since both of them liked each other at first sight, they did not waste time and immediately registered their marriage. Their relationship was great from the very first time, and they had a great chemistry. Under Martin's guidance and Christine's brilliant design, their company was soon a listed company. It bloomed at a faster rate and soon attracted a lot of investors. Christine often disappeared from time to time, but Martin was never worried. She always told him that it was the nature of her work, and he absolutely trusted her. One time she disappeared and came back 3 months later and said that she was pregnant. Counting from the time she had disappeared and the period of her pregnancy, Martin was immediately excited. During the remaining 6 months, Christine did not go anywhere and stayed at home to take care of her pregnancy. Martin was so happy that he could not ask for more. Days went by, and month after month passed. It was her due date, and Martin took her to the hospital. She delivered a baby girl whom Martin fell in love with at first sight. But 5 years later, Christine was involved in a car accident. Martin went to find her body, but it was nowhere to be seen. He became suspicious and started to investigate, but up until now he has come up with nothing. Coming back from his distant memories, Martin gave a painful laugh as he let tears roll down his cheeks. "I thought that you were a goddess. I never asked anything concerning your work or your family. I trusted you wholeheartedly and did not care what you did. But what did you give me in return? How could you be this cruel to me?" Martin cried as he stared at the photo in his hands. "I loved you. I did everything so I could not let you down. But you still made a fool out of me? Why, Christine, why?" Martin could not control his emotions and sobbed thoroughly. After a considerable amount of time, Martin stood up, took all the things that belonged to his dead wife, and went to burn them. After burning them to ashes, he locked himself in the study room and smoked cigarette after cigarette. When Velma opened her eyes, she found herself lying in a huge king-sized bed. Several machines were connected to her body. She was startled and tried to wake up. The noise from her side woke up the man who has been napping on the chair beside the bed. "You are up." Albert opened his eyes and asked gently. When Velma heard someone speaking beside her bed, she immediately looked over. She was shocked to see Albert staring at her with a gentle light. "Where am I and where is my baby?" Velma asked. You could see in her eyes that she was panicked. "You are in my house and your baby is safe. You needed immediate medical attention. How could you be so careless? You had just given birth, but you were out there standing in the cold," Albert said. Although he was angry, he could not bring himself to scold her. Velma instantly felt wronged when she heard Albert's accusing tone. I think I wanted to be on the street? If I had somewhere to go, I would have gone already. Who are you to find fault in me? Do you think that I don't care about my baby?" Velma said as she cried sadly. She has not come over the fact that her father had abandoned her mercilessly. How could she face another accusation? "Thank you for your help. I will leave with my baby," so that we don't become a burden to you. I will be sure to repay your kindness one day, Velma said as she tried to get off the bed. Albert moved closer to her and held her. I did not say you can leave. And I'm sorry, I did not mean to frighten or accuse you of anything. I'm just worried about. You suddenly fainted, and I did not know that you had just given birth. The birth was a little weak, and the doctors are taking care of him. Rest well, we will talk after you have recovered, Albert said gently as he tucked her in bed. I will call the doctors to come and check on you. Don't move around. I mean no harm, Albert said and called the doctor over. Please don't take my baby away from me. He is the only family I have left. Please, Velma cried as she clutched Albert's hand tightly. Albert stiffened. Did he look like someone who could kidnap a baby? Although he wanted to, but the prerequisite was that they had to be both mother and son. He cannot let her escape again. Rest assured I will not harm your baby. I just want to confirm some things with you once you get better. I have been looking for you all this while just to take responsibility and not to harm you. Remembering that night, Albert's body was uncomfortable. He had dreamed different scenarios of them meeting, but none of what happened was in his mind. He missed her body so much that he did not even want to look at other women. When the doctor came, Albert left them to do their job and went to his study, followed by his assistant. Go to the city hospital and get me the details of Velma and investigate everything that happened. In detail. Do not leave anything out, Albert instructed. He then went to see his son who was sleeping peacefully in the nursery. Looking at the little guy, Albert's eyes softened. He had never thought that he will a father the moment he returned. Although the feeling was new, he wanted to cherish every moment of it. Chapter 5. The following morning, Velma woke up with a start. Remembering what has transpired since she gave birth until now, she felt a headache. When she was pregnant, her father had tried his best to block all the news concerning her. She also stopped going to the company. Her father told her colleagues that she had fallen sick and had gone overseas to recuperate. Thinking about her father, Velma's heart hurt so much that she could not even breathe. Will he ever forgive her? Her father had been looking forward to the coming of his grandson. She did not expect that something like that could happen. Suddenly the door was pushed open. Albert walked in the room wearing a plain t-shirt and loose pajamas. It seemed like he was not going to work today. You are awake. His face bloomed with a happy smile when he saw Velma. Velma looked at him and said nothing. She only cared about her baby, and if he was okay. Where is my baby? I want to see him, Velma said. Your baby is all right. You should wash up, and then I will take you to him, Albert said. He moved forward and touched her forehead. Seeing that her fever was gone, he let out a relieved sigh. She suddenly developed a high fever yesterday at night, and he was worried that it might be dangerous to her health. Knowing that the fever was gone, he was assured. Seeing him come close and touch her forehead, Velma shrunk in the covers. What are you doing? She asked, her voice panicking. I'm just checking if your fever is gone. You suddenly developed a high fever of 41 degrees Celsius, and I was worried. But it is gone. You should clean up and come out, Albert said, and turned around to leave the room. Velma looked at his lonely straight back and had a strange feeling in her heart. When she tried to stand up, she suddenly realized that her body was very sticky, and even the clothes were sticking on her body as if they soaked. She felt embarrassed thinking that Albert had seen her in that state. She wondered how long she had been sleeping. She hurried to the bathroom to take a bath. Soaking in the lukewarm water in the bathtub, Velma suddenly felt alive. Martin had been in bad mood for the past few days and spent almost all his time drinking. He did not even care about the company and had not been seen for several days. He had not even contacted Velma, and he did not know how she was doing out there with a newborn baby. He felt terrible thinking about what his late wife had done to him. He could only drown himself in alcohol. Why are punishing yourself because of unimportant people? Susan's displeased voice was heard the moment Martin opened the door, his whole body reeking of alcohol. She betrayed you first. Why would you punish yourself because of her? Shouldn't you be strong so that whenever she can feel ashamed of herself? You have already abandoned her daughter. What else are you afraid of? Wake up, stop wasting your time, and start building yourself up, Susan said as she supported him to the sofa. But Martin pushed her away with disdain. What do you know about Christine? I know she had her own reasons. She will never betray me. Martin murmured in his drunken stupor. Stop fooling yourself, Martin. Velma is there, proving that your wife betrayed you. She gave birth to child for another man. Don't you see that? Stop brainwashing yourself. It will be of no use. Susan shouted angrily. Only she knew how she had endured all this time. Since they registered their marriage, Martin had never touched her. To be precise, they slept in separate rooms. Martin said that he will never betray his dead wife by sleeping with another woman. The far he could go was get a marriage certificate. To him, Susan was more of a nanny than a wife. He had said that no one will be able to replace his dead wife. He only married Susan because she slightly resembled Christine. The resemblance was not obvious, but to Martin, it was like his wife had come back to life. That is why he agreed to marry Susan in the first place. Susan was tired by being a substitute and really wanted to end this marriage, but thinking of the order from her master, she could only restrain herself and endure the humiliation. Christine! Martin called out painfully and fainted. Susan sneered in her heart and helped him to the master's bedroom. This was her second time coming to this bedroom. The first time after their marriage, Martin almost strangled her to death when he found her sleeping in the bed. Flashback. What are you doing here? Martin asked angrily as he approached the bed. We are married, aren't we supposed to stay in the same room? Susan said, not understanding what she had done wrong. Who said that you could step into this bedroom? You have no right to do that. This is mine and Christine's room. No one is allowed to enter. Martin roared at her. From now on, you will staying in the guest room. Just take care of my daughter well, and I will not treat you bad. Her face was streamed with tears as she left the room, but Martin did not show any mercy. Coming back in this room for the second time, she felt sentimental and did not know what to do. But remembering the humiliation she had suffered, she just wanted to stuff Martin on the bed and leave immediately. After walking him to bed, Susan helped him to remove his shoes and tucked him in the covers. She turned around intending to leave, but Martin immediately held her hand. Christine, don't leave, okay? I don't care as long as you are with me. I don't even care about Velma. Please come back to me. Susan turned stiff. He has still mistaken her for Christine. When will he ever stop to treat her like a substitute? Susan turned around stiffly and tried to pry her hand from Martin's strong grip. I'm not Christine. I think you had too much to drink. You should rest. Susan said through gritted teeth. Christine, why did you do that to me? Before Susan could react, she was flung on the bed and fell directly in Martin's chest. He kissed her with hunger. She did not have time to react before her clothes were torn open. Chapter 6. When Martin opened his eyes, he felt a splitting headache. He could not even lift his eyelids. They were so heavy that they hurt when he tried to open them. He felt something moving on his side. Looking over, he found that he was hugging something soft in his hand. Martin was startled. He even forgot about his hurting head as he looked over in an instant. Lying before him was Susan. Her face was flushed and several hickeys could be seen on her body. She was sleeping peacefully and clutching on his arm tightly. What did I do yesterday? Did I sleep with her? Martin thought as he removed Susan's hand that was clutching his. He was not at all gentle. He used a lot of force, which made Susan to wake with a start. Her gaze was still dazed as she tried to remember what happened yesterday. Seeing that Martin was looking at her coldly, Susan felt a chill in her heart. We have already slept together. What was with that gaze of his? Shouldn't he apologize for taking advantage of her? Susan thought angrily. What are you doing in my bed? Did I not warn you that you cannot come in here? Martin asked angrily. Don't you remember how we ended up here? Susan lost her cool. You came home drunk. You could not even walk properly. The only thing that you did was to call Christine's name. I was kind enough to help you to bed, but instead of thanking me, you mistook me for Christine and refused to let go. Do you think I wanted this? I have been waiting for a day when you will reciprocate my feelings. But it is like you were bewitched by that woman, and you can't think of anything else. She betrayed you, Martin, gave birth to child for another man, and deceived you that it was yours. Maybe she never loved you, and you were just someone to pleasure her. Open your eyes and stop fooling yourself. There is no need to be hung on the past that you cannot change. Some things are just irreversible. Susan said. For the first, Martin did not flare up. Instead, he looked at her sharply without saying anything. Although he did not like this woman, But Martin could not deny that she was right. Since they did not find Christine's body at the scene where the accident happened, Martin had always carried a glimmer of hope, hoping that Christine was not dead, and she will come back to them. But more than 15 years have passed and there was nothing. Not even a trace of her. Do you love me? Martin looked at the woman before him and asked all of a sudden. Susan was shocked and felt that maybe her ears were playing a prank on her. What did you say? She asked Martin with a shaky voice. I asked you if you love me? Martin repeated his question. Is that even a question? Don't you know how I have been feeling about you all these years? Susan said with a trace of joy in her voice. But I have not been treating you well. Why did you not leave? Martin asked. I did not leave because I love you. And I think that there is no one better than you out there. Susan said seriously. Then we will start our life. You will officially become my wife, and you should move your things here. Martin said as he looked around the room. There was not trace of Christine, because he had burned everything that belonged to her in a fit of anger. Okay. Susan smiled brightly. Martin looked on dazed. She smiled just like Christine. When he had met her for the first time, he thought that she had done plastic surgery, so as to look like his dead wife. He even forced her to go to the hospital with him. But after confirming that she had not gone under the knife, Martin decided to marry her. And now that smile. Martin shook his head and went to the bathroom to take a shower. He scrubbed himself hard, as if he wanted to wash away all the pain that Christine had caused him. Susan happily went to make breakfast. At Albert's bungalow, Velma was having breakfast in the dining room. It was a huge house with the European design. Looking at the furniture in the room, they were all custom-made. Although Velma's family was not worse off, but compared to this, they were still miles apart. She was amazed yesterday as she taking a walk around the house. She only toured halfway and was already tired. She was planning on continuing her tour today. Eat more. Since you have just give birth, you need to eat a lot of nutritious food and drink a lot of soup. Albert said as he scooped for Velma some dishes. I can take care of myself, Velma said. She was only used to her father taking care of her. She still did not know the intentions of this man, so she had to be vigilant. They were supposed to talk yesterday, but he received an emergency call from the company and had to rush over. He came back late when Velma had already slept. Are you free today? Velma asked the man who was eating breakfast in a dignified manner. He was so good-looking that even eating breakfast felt like a piece of art. Yes. The company is not busy, so I won't be going today. It feels good to be a boss, right? Velma asked. Why do you say so? Albert asked. Because you can go to the company whenever you want and no one will fire you. Velma said. Aha. Do you want to be a boss too? I can stay at home to take care of Gift while you provide for us. Albert said, trying to test the waters. After what Velma went through, she decided to name her child Gift. I need to talk to you, Velma said with seriousness. Okay, finish your breakfast, then we will talk, Albert said as he took a bite of sausage. After breakfast, Albert took Velma to his study room. Velma was amazed once more. His study room was huge. It had a shelf which was filled with all kinds, from business to novels. His desk was huge and had a desktop on top of it. The documents on the table were arranged neatly, and you could tell at a glance that the owner was a clean freak. The walls were clean without any spot. He pressed a remote on the desk and the curtains opened. The sun penetrated through the window, illuminating his handsome face. He looked like a painting as everything else paled in comparison. Don't be polite with me. Have a seat, Albert said as he pointed at the sofa in the room. Velma did not say anything and sat down. Chapter 7. Back at Martin's house. After Susan made sure that Martin was gone, she dialed a number that had not been dialed in a long time. Hello, the mission is done, Susan said the moment the phone went through. Good. Although it took you long enough. A reverberated laugh was heard from the other end of the phone. Try to take pictures of you two being intimate. I think that will be the torture to her. Okay. Rest assured I will not fail you, Susan said, and hung up the phone. Meanwhile, in Albert's study room, what happened that night 9 months ago was a mistake, Velma stated. How could you know that it was not fate? Albert asked. I'm pretty sure someone set me up, but I had not had time to investigate since I literally stayed at home and had no time to go out for the last few months. Velma said. So what are going to do? Just leave me like that? Are you going to deny me the chance of even being a father to my own baby? Albert asked. You know I was taken advantage too. I did not mean to sleep with you, but the drug in you was too strong. It could have affected you. Albert said. Velma did not dare look at his eyes. Although it had already been 9 months since the incident, she vaguely remembered what had happened that night. Look, Albert, I appreciate that you want to take care of me. The problem is I already have a boyfriend. Velma said. Does he know that you already have a baby? Albert asked. No. He has not been in the country, and I did not want to tell him on the phone. I was waiting for him to come back before I explain it to him in person. Velma said. Do you really love him? Albert asked as he looked at Velma with a deep gaze. Of course I do. We have been together for 4 years when I was in college. Velma said, her aura turning gentle and sweet. I see. Albert nodded with some disappointment. I want you to take a look at this. Albert said as he handed her a brown envelope. Velma looked at him suspiciously, but still took it. Inside was all the information that Albert had gathered within the last 9 months. After that night, he also felt that things were not so simple. It had everything that had happened that fateful night. As Velma read, her expression became more ugly. At last her face had already turned into different shades of color from red to pink to white. She did not know what she was feeling right now. Winnie! 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 She called that name 3 times, her whole body trembling with unknown fear. How much did she hate her? To even do something so vicious. If she had gone to her room. Velma clutched her head and did not want to think about it anymore. Ruining someone's life was easy. How could Winnie be so vicious? They had been rivals since college, but even Velma did not know what they were fighting for. She just knew that Winnie hated her, and they have never been on the same page. Albert went forward and hugged her. He leaned her head on his broad chest and consoled her patiently. Velma's phone rung, forcing her to calm down. When she saw it was her father calling, her tear-stained face lit up with obvious joy. Dad, you finally called, Velma said in an excited tone. During the past few days, she had missed her dad so much. Sometimes she almost dialed his number, but resisted the temptation in the end. After what happened, she wanted her father to calm down first. Come to the company right now and pick your stuff. You no longer need to come to work. Martin's cold voice was heard through the phone. The warmth and gentleness that Velma was used to was nowhere to be seen. Velma's heart instantly fell to the bottom of hell. She felt that she was walking in the cold ice barefoot. Her heart hurt so much that she felt a taste of blood in her mouth. She thought that her father loved her so much, and whatever happened, he will always be there for her. It never crossed her mind that he will change so suddenly, that he will not want to have anything to do with her. Did he really believe that she was not his biological daughter? Velma let out a painful scream and fainted. She could not take all of this in. Her heart was not as strong as she thought. Although she had prepared for the worst, but this was beyond what she could have ever imagined. Chapter 8. Albert was startled when Velma fainted in his arms, and immediately called the doctor. They gave her a 4-drop, and after confirming that she was not in any dangerous situation, Albert was relieved. Gift might have felt the distress of his mother, and he too started to cry. The babysitting nanny tried to calm him down by giving him milk, but he could not stop crying. Master, young master can't stop crying. I have changed his diaper, washed him, and even gave him milk, but he is still crying. The nanny's voice reached Albert's ears the moment he stepped out of the room. Albert looked at the little dumpling crying hysterically in the nanny's hands, and felt a headache. Let me hold him, Albert said as he stretched out his hands to hold his baby. Okay, the nanny said as she handed over the baby. The moment Richard held him, the little guy suddenly stopped crying, and even smiled at him. He moved his head towards a certain direction, and even made a sniffing sound. Seeing that, Albert noticed that it was where Velma's head was lying. So this guy only wanted to smell his mother's scent. What a stubborn thing. Albert wanted to spank him, but he was too small and he could not bear to. After smelling her mother's scent that he had missed too much, and probably knowing that his mother was fine, the little guy put his fingers in his mouth, and soon drifted to sleep. Albert walked towards the bedroom with his son. Master, the nanny called out, bring one of your missus' clothes to my room. Albert ordered, and soon vanished in the corridor. The nanny did not ask any more questions, and went to get the clothes. Since Velma came, Albert had been addressing her as his wife, and they were already used to it. Albert laid down his son on his huge bed, but the little guy started crying again after smelling the unfamiliar scent. Just then the nanny came in holding a cotton scarf. It was kind of a towel, but anyway it helped calm the little guy as he slept soundly. Velma woke up and found herself sleeping in a huge bed, and in a big bedroom. She did not need to ask before she knew that this was Albert's bedroom. She was panicked when she thought that Albert had taken advantage of her again. How could this man be such a bastard? Did we not talk about this? She was annoyed and wanted to wake up, but she felt a warm nibble on her finger. Looking over, her son's small face greeted her eyes. Velma's heart instantly melted into a mess. She touched her son's face gently and kissed him on the forehead. She even forgot about her anger and did not want to wake up anymore. She leaned against the bed as she started to go through in her mind everything that she had experienced since the day she gave birth. Her life had been great even during her pregnancy. Her father wholeheartedly supported her. How come she lost a lot of blood when she was giving birth, and even had to undergo an operation, and yet her gynecologist had told her that she will have a smooth delivery without any complications? Something did not feel right somewhere. After thinking through, she decided that nothing will stop her from raising her baby. She had to grow strong to unsolve all these mysteries. Her mother's death was also a mystery she needed to solve. Just then Albert walked in. "You are awake?" Albert asked when he reached the bedroom. He was wearing casual clothes, and his hair was still damp, a sign that he has just come out of the shower. "How did we end up here?" Velma asked as she looked at the man closely. Although they have been living together for the past few days, Velma had never taken a closer look at this man. She has always assumed that he was her savior, and nothing will ever happen between them, even if he was her son's father. Seeing him closely, he was really handsome. Even Alvin fell in comparison. Alvin was her boyfriend. Although he was handsome, but compared to this man, he was far behind in terms of looks. Velma eyed him some more and averted her gaze. Albert did not flinch as he let her check him out. He moved closer to bed, climbed it and soon reached his son's bed. He gave him a gentle kiss on his forehead as his eyes oozed with gentleness. "Did you sleep well?" Albert asked the woman across him. "I guess," Velma answered, somehow dazed. "That is good. Don't worry. I slept in the guest room. Gift could not stop crying for you, so I had to bring you here. He could not sleep with you in the medical room." Albert explained simply. He was someone who was used to doing things his own way, and did not like explaining himself. But he made an exception about Velma after seeing her expression. She might have thought that he took advantage of her. Thinking of that, his expression darkened. "When are you going to start trusting me? In your eyes, am I such a beast who could not even learn from his mistakes?" Albert asked, feeling displeased. Velma looked at him and did not say anything for a long time. After waking up and taking a quick shower, Velma was ready to go to her dad's company. "I will accompany you," Albert said when he saw that she was all set. "There is no need, I think I can handle it," Velma said as she shook her head. "I will just drive you then, and I will wait for you in the car then," Albert said. He did not want to pressure her. "It is really hard to find a taxi here. I better drive you." "Okay." Velma finally nodded. "Auntie Mary, please take care of Gift well. I will be back soon," Velma said, took her handbag and left the house. Albert had bought her a lot of bags, clothes and shoes for her. Since she left everything in her father's house, she had to do with what was available. The journey to Martin's company was smooth. They soon reached the gate. Velma showed her identification and was allowed in. Albert remained in the parking lot as Velma went directly to the CEO's office. Her office was located on the same floor as her father's. She wanted her father to give her a chance so they could talk. But she could not have thought that her father did not even want to see her. He had instructed his secretary to pack up everything Velma owned in the company. She was not even allowed to access her office. "Miss Velma, the president is in a meeting right now. He said you can just pick your stuff and leave," the secretary said. "I just want 5 minutes of his time," Velma said. She knew that at this hour, her father was not in any meeting. He just refused to see her. "I'm sorry, miss. That is what the president commanded." The secretary refused. "Okay." Velma did not insist. She looked at the CEO's door longingly before she picked her stuff and left with a lonely back. Her office was just next to her father's. He arranged that way so they could take care of each other during work time. When Velma reached downstairs, she bumped into her stepmother. What a horrible day it is today, she thought as she strode forward, not even wanting to say hi. But how could Susan let her off easily? Ooh, isn't this our mighty Mistress Velma? Why are you here? To beg for your father's forgiveness, Susan said as she eyed Velma up and down. I see that you don't look too bad. How did you manage out there? Or did you already hook up with another rich tycoon? Susan said, I remember that all your cards are at home. Where did you get the money to buy all these expensive clothes? Susan talked for a long time, but Velma only looked at her coldly. My life is none of your business, she said coldly and continued to walk forward. Tisk. Why are you mad now? You have always acted high and mighty in front of me. Where is your arrogance now? Susan said before she strode towards the elevator. She could not waste her time arguing with that loser. The moment she looked at, she was reminded of Christine. They have been competing almost all their life in the organization. Christine was the most favored, while Susan always lost every moment they competed. She sneered in her heart and went into the elevator. Chapter 9. In the car, looking at the woman whose face had turned pale, Albert knew that she had suffered. What happened? He asked softly as he helped her fasten the seat belt. Nothing. I thought that my dad would at least want to see me, but I was wrong. Maybe the affection we've had for each other died that day. He wants nothing to do with me, Velma said, having a complicated feeling in her heart. I'm sorry, this is all my fault, Albert said, blaming himself. If he had controlled his desires, this would not have happened. It is not your fault. You actually saved me in a way. If it had happened the way Winnie had planned, I'm pretty sure I will be dead by now. Velma said, Don't worry about me. I will get over it soon. It is just that I don't know where I can start looking for a job, Velma said, closing her eyes. Just then her cell phone rung. It was Alvin calling. Hello, dear. Where are you? Alvin's gentle voice came through the phone. Hello, have you already arrived? Velma asked, her voice too turning gentle. I arrived a few days ago, Alvin said. Ooh, why didn't you tell me about it? Velma asked. I wanted to give you a surprise. Are you busy now? Alvin asked over the phone. Not really. Okay. Then come to the seaside hotel where we used to meet, Alvin said and hung up the phone. Velma was a little nervous. She did not know how Alvin will react after knowing that she slept with a stranger and even gave birth to a baby. During the 9 months of her pregnancy, she did not talk to him much. She told him that she had contracted a deadly disease and was recovering. Albert started the car, and after Velma gave him the location, he set off to Seaside Hotel. They soon reached and Velma was led to a private room. Inside the room, Alvin had already ordered her favorite food and was waiting for her. Hey! Velma walked over and gave him a peck on the cheek. You came fast, or were you around? Alvin said as he looked at her. I was at the company. I had gone to pick up some stuff, and thank God there was no much jam on road, so I was not delayed. Have you been waiting for long? Velma asked. No. I actually spent the night here. I had a business meeting, and it ended late. You know how it is always when meeting those old sly foxes. I had a lot to drink, so I just spent the night here. Alvin said, How have you been? You told me you were sick. Have you recovered? I can see that your face is a little pale, Alvin said as he handed her a glass of warm water. Have some water first. Thanks. Velma lowered her head feeling guilty. She had no idea how she will bring up the topic of her pregnancy. Actually, Alvin, there is something I have been wanting to tell you, but I don't know how or where to start from. Velma gathered her courage as she looked at Alvin. What is it? You know you can tell me anything, Alvin said with encouraging eyes. Velma did not know how to say it. Just say it already. Why do you want to keep Alvin in the dark? Didn't you say that you love him, and you will never do anything to betray him? Before Velma could say anything, a female voice was heard at the door. Velma looked over and found Winnie standing at the door looking down on her with disdain. What is she doing here? Velma thought as several possibilities crossed her mind. When they were in college, Alvin had been a hot cake, and every girl wanted to be with him. Winnie was no exception. She had specifically confessed her feelings to Alvin in front of the whole class, and was rejected. Later Albert started dating Velma, and maybe that is why Winnie hated her so much. But at that time, Velma had thought that it was not a big deal, that everyone should be with the person he or she loves, so she never understood why Winnie hated her. Not until now. Winnie walked directly to Oliven and gave him a kiss on the lips. "Babe, why didn't you wait for me?" Winnie asked with a sweet smile on her face. Velma looked on dumbfounded, not knowing what to feel anymore. Was today her retribution day? Why was everything and everyone going against her? She forced herself to calm down, looked at the two of them, and asked with a shaking voice, "What is going on between the two of you?" "Oh, Velma, it is as you see it. Of course we are together. What else do you think is going on?" Winnie said as she looked at her like she was looking at a clown. "Actually, Velma, I know everything that happened 9 months ago. How could you do that to me? You promised me that you will wait for me, and that you will never do anything to betray me. But what did you do in the end? Getting yourself drunk and sleeping around with unknown men. Did you think that I will not find out? Why didn't you say anything? You even lied to me that you were sick, and you needed time to recover. Was it so that you could give birth without me knowing? Then come and lie to me of how you were taken advantage of. Why didn't you abort that bastard?" The more Alvin talked, the more his voice rose. "It is not what you think. I can explain." Velma found her voice after a long time. "Explain what? That you slept with another man without knowing? Or that someone raped you?" "Velma, I'm not a child and I know what exactly happened. I never knew that you were that sort of a person. If you were so much sex deprived, you could have just told me. Or was that man actually your other lover that you have been fooling around with? And yet in front of me, you act all pure and innocent." Velma's ears buzzed. She felt that thousands of bees were in her ears making lots of noise. "You said that you know everything that happened, right?" Velma asked. Her eyes had already blurred with unshed tears. "Yes. How you did not go back to your room, and sent yourself to another man's room for a whole night, and even got yourself pregnant. Who do you think you can fool? Then you should have known that someone intentionally drugged me with aphrodisiac," Velma said as she looked at Winnie with a meaningful gaze. Winnie's expression changed in a second, but it was soon back to normal. She believed that she had destroyed everything that would lead to her being the mastermind, and Velma would not have found out anything. "Why are you looking at me like that? Could you be possibly thinking that I'm responsible for your misfortune, right?" Winnie said, trying to cover up her guilt. "Actually, I was shocked too when I found out that you were pregnant. I could not believe it, and immediately informed Alvin. Babe, I didn't mean for you to be heartbroken. You know I have liked you for a long time, and I could not stand by and watch as you are made a fool of by the girl who claimed to love you." "How long have you two been together?" Velma asked. She felt that she could not breathe, even just looking at their faces. "It is none of your damn business. Are you the only one allowed to sleep with other men? But I'm not allowed to look for girls. I think we are now even, Velma. From now on we are strangers. We have nothing to do with each other. The next time we meet, we will have nothing to do with each other," Alvin said, without even waiting for Velma to tell her side of the story. "Next time stay away from my boyfriend," Winnie said, revealing a winning smile. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "Alvin, don't ever regret it if one day you found out that it is not actually how you thought it was. Because on that day, I won't want to see you too," Velma shouted as she ran outside the room. She had no idea how she managed to find her way back to the car.